My son went missing on Christmas, and I just found something disturbing in his room. By 36 CF.
I believe it goes without saying that every parent's worst nightmare is losing their child. 3 days ago, that nightmare became a reality for me as I took a single bite of Santa's cookie and went upstairs to wake my 2 boys up. My youngest, Clyde, had already been awake and was sitting patiently on his bed, eagerly awaiting my signal to head downstairs and begin opening gifts. This was not all too surprising. What 12 and 7-year-old boys sleep in on Christmas morning? What was surprising was that Jack's bed was empty. He was nowhere to be found, despite my tucking him in his bed and wishing him a good night around 9 p.m. the previous night. The detectives are supposedly still investigating, but I'm fully aware of the horrifying statistic that after the first 48 hours of being missing, the chances of finding my son become very slim. I'm also quite sure that they still consider me a suspect, although their initial investigation failed to prove that. Earlier today, while helping Clyde with his math homework, I threw one of his little Nerf footballs across the room, and after a couple of bounces, it became lodged between the wall and Jack's bed. I walked on over and pulled the bed away from the wall a bit to retrieve it, and that's when I noticed the loose floorboard. I don't understand how this was missed by myself and the detective that scoured the room, but it was quite obvious once I did notice it. I believe what I found in there may have something to do with Jack's disappearance. Being a single father of 2 and working a full-time job left me very little time, especially around the holidays, to carry on the many different Christmas traditions that I had as a child. So on the first day of December, when I saw a little raggedy-looking elf on the shelf, I was very impressed that Jack had took it upon himself to start this tradition for his little brother. When I had first asked him about it, his demeanor changed drastically, and he demanded that no one ever touch the elf. I left it at that. After all, the story says that the elf will lose its magic if touched by a human. I didn't want to ruin it for Clyde, so I just played along. Each morning, the little elf would show up in a new spot in our small home. I was so proud of my boy for being such a great big brother. The reason I bring up the elf is because what I found under the floorboard in his room was some kind of homemade children's book titled Elf on the Shelf. It was written crudely with different colored markers for each letter, although clearly written by someone with a very shaky hand. I handed the book over to the detectives, but not before writing down a copy for myself. I really don't know what to make of this, but I know it has something to do with whoever took my son.
Elf on the Shelf. Have you ever wondered how anyone could know if you're naughty or nice each year as you grow? For hundreds of years it's been a big secret, but it can now be shared if you promise to keep it. This year you were chosen. He sent me to you. I watch and report on all that you do. My job's an assignment from the big man himself. I'm just his helper, a little scouting elf. While I'm here visiting the place you call home, remain in your room. Be sure not to roam. Once you are ready, the mission can start. Whose name will you scream as he rips out your heart? Will it be Father or Clyde? He can't take you all, so you must decide. Each night while you're sleeping, to your room he will fly. No one can know, or else they too will die. Of course, a little magic helps me be quick. I record your whole day and report it with a click. I tell him if you have been good or have been bad. The news of the day makes him happy or sad. One word about this and I'll report to the boss. But keeping this secret won't be a loss. In the car, at the park, or even at school, word will get out if you break any rule. He will be gone before you awake. Speak a word to anyone, and your brother he'll take. He'll jump out of bed and come running to see who will be the first to beg and to plea. Maybe in the kitchen, the bathroom, or the den is where he'll find dear Clyde met his end. I can hide on a plant, a shelf, or a frame. Where will I be? Let's make it a game. There's another important rule you must know. Choose to ignore it, and his rage will grow. Keep your window unlocked before you climb into bed. Think wonderful thoughts inside that little head. How else can he check how good you have been? He might start to think you forgot about him. The night before Christmas, my job's at an end. The rest of the year in paradise we'll spend. So blow them a kiss and bid them farewell. We'll fly far, far away, but you can never tell. Of course they will miss you, but wait till next year. When the holidays come, I'll again reappear. I wish every girl and each little boy a safe place to hide until next year when I visit young Clyde.
I'm only posting here out of complete desperation. If anyone knows anything that could help me locate my sweet boy, please message me right away.
The Christmas Elf is Watching You by J. Group.
What if I was in the bedroom and I did something bad? Would the elf still see it?
My son's eyes were worried as he looked up at me.
Yep, that's how it works. As long as he's in our house, he sees everything you're doing. He's magic, just like Santa.
Yikes. In retrospect, the whole thing was creepy and off-putting, especially considering what happened in the weeks following that.
The elf was in my bedroom last night, Daddy.
We were sitting at the breakfast table the next morning.
Oh, really? Well, see, just like I told you, he's keeping an eye on you.
Kids are always making up stories.
He told me he was watching me really close and that you and Mom had better be good too, because if you aren't, he's going to be angry.
I just nodded and told Sammy to eat the rest of his cereal and to drink his orange juice. We were going to be late for school anyway. My wife told me 2 days later she was getting worried about Sammy. He kept talking about the homemade elf we crafted together as a family and how it was telling him to do strange things. But he wouldn't say what. I told her I would talk to him, thinking she meant that he was being told by the elf to be a good boy or something like that. But I should have realized by the look in her eyes that it was something more serious. We were never good at communicating, the two of us. Maybe it was my fault what ended up happening. I spoke with Sammy that night in his bedroom as I was tucking him in and asked him what he had meant.
Did you mean when you told Mommy that the elf tells you to do things?
He opened his mouth to speak and then paused, seeming to think about it for a second. His eyes drifted up, and he began to play with the fabric of the bed covers self-consciously.
What did he mean? Well, he just said to be good, Daddy. That's all. To do good things.
In retrospect, it was obviously a lie, but I was too distracted by my thoughts of work to pay attention. I only listened to the words and heard what I wanted to hear.
Okay, good night, Sammy. Sweet dreams.
I was slammed at work for the next few days, and so was my wife. She worked in retail, so she barely saw any of us as it got closer to Christmas. I told her I had talked to our son and everything was okay. He was just trying to be good before Christmas. She told me that that didn't sound right. He had been acting very unusual, and she hadn't liked the tone of his voice or the distant look in his eyes. As she said that, I realized he had been increasingly aloof lately. He hadn't been finishing his breakfast or dinner, wasn't asking his usual 10 million questions a minute. He had put on his shirt inside out that morning, and 2 days before that, it had been backwards. The teacher had called from school to ask if there was trouble at home. All red flags. And then, the following night, I realized something was terribly wrong with him. I was lying in bed with my eyes open after struggling to fall asleep for hours when I noticed movement in the doorway. The darkness was nearly total, but I could swear I had seen someone crawling on the floor. It was so hard to see though. My heart pounding, I reached for the bedside lamp, feeling for it with my hands. Trembling, I managed to grab the cord and pulled it just as the shadowy figure got up to the bedside. It was barely visible, but I could just make it out. The form of a person crawling around like a wild animal on the floor, moving quickly and erratically. My heart was in my throat as I turned the light on, blinding me for a second. I couldn't see anything. Blinking the light away and trying not to panic, I finally managed to see what was happening. Nothing. There was no one in the bedroom but my wife and I. Unable to shake the feeling that I had seen something, I jumped out of bed and looked underneath like a kid checking for monsters. Nothing. The image flashed before my eyes again of what I had just seen moments before, a barely visible silhouette in the pitch black room. It had looked like someone on the ground on all fours, moving around quickly, like a predator hunting in the night. Someone small, the size of a child. I left our bedroom, heart still pounding, taking a look back at my wife still snoring in bed. She was sleeping with a face mask to block out the light, so I hadn't woken her up. I went quickly down the hall to Sammy's bedroom and looked inside. My blood turned ice cold. The bed was empty. I heard giggling down the hall, then screams. My wife let out a blood-curdling howl of agony and sheer horror. Everything went into slow motion, and my legs felt like they were in quicksand as I spun around and tried to hurry back toward the bedroom, toward the sound of something awful. It was the sound of a side of beef getting taken apart by a butcher, but wetter. Blood was everywhere when I went into the room and saw the image that will haunt me forever. My son was standing on the bed, stabbing my wife again and again with a long chef's knife. His eyes were distant, and he almost looked like he was sleepwalking as he stabbed her through the chest, face, arms, and belly, sporadically and randomly. I realized suddenly why she wasn't fighting back. She was dead. I let out a choked whimper of horrified sadness, and that was when I saw the elf. He was standing on our dresser, cheering Sammy on. He was jumping up and down gleefully, telling him to stab, 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 and kill, kill, kill. My only son turned to face me.
Did I do good, Daddy? The elf said Mommy was bad. He said that she lied to you yesterday when you asked her what she bought you for Christmas. He said she needed to get punished.
The elf was looking at me, wanting to hear what I would say to him. Better be careful now, I thought to myself. This elf has such a twisted set of morals.
What did the elf say about murder, Sammy? He said it's okay because she lied. People aren't supposed to lie, Daddy.
His eyes were glazed over, and he climbed off the bed and approached me, splattered head to toe in blood and gore.
You never lie, right, Daddy?
He was holding the knife up in the air, pointed end toward me, looking ready to stab again.
I try not to. Good. That's good, Daddy. Come on, Mr. Elf. Let's get back to bed.
The little handmade elf that we had crafted together as a family climbed down carefully from on top of the dresser and joined my son at the door. He looked up at me with mischievous eyes made from cut-out construction paper. I don't know how, but that elf has brainwashed my son. He's turning him into something else. His puppet. I was terrified to speak, too scared to pick up the phone. What if someone asks me how my wife is doing? What will I say? I need to be really careful not to lie or do anything else naughty. The elf is always watching.
Elf on the Shelf by Salami Mommy.
I always thought it was an adorable idea. They are cute as a button and have become a holiday tradition in many homes. If you have no idea what I'm talking about a plush elf that parents stick in random spots of their homes around the holidays. They tell their kids the elf reports to Santa and tells of their behavior. Every day the elf is in a new spot too. Some parents find cute and creative ideas, and the rule is you can't touch them. I think what made me want to pull the trigger on getting one was when me and my new girlfriend went to a Mexican restaurant and watched a kid carrying around his mason jar. Either he was obsessed with it, or he was horribly misbehaved. Either way, it was adorable. Stephanie felt in awe too. I guess a part of me wondered if children were in store for me and this beautiful lady. I'm a very festive person and keep my head in the clouds after all. She was giggly when she came to my apartment, and it was sitting there on the counter next to her fresh cup of coffee. We always found cute ways to set her around during the holidays. We spent years doing that. We even named the elf Bonnie. Bonnie even helped me with a big task. She held a piece of paper instructing my girlfriend to turn around. When she did, I held out an expensive wedding ring. She bawled and jumped in excitement. I felt on top of the world. And then things changed. She became controlling. I couldn't go out with the boys for a few drinks. I couldn't go to the Yankees game without her, and she hates baseball. I couldn't even call my mom without me wanting to put the phone in speaker so I wasn't talking to some bitch. She would tell me if she didn't like the clothes I wore, if my beard wasn't short enough, if I didn't pick up the right snacks from the grocery store. She became worse when she saw a text message when my best friend told me I should leave her. What's even worse is I haven't heard from him to this day. No one has. What broke the straw and made me leave was when she didn't want me to go to his memorial service. We have been best friends since we were kids. When I told her I wanted to, she split up a coffee mug and smashed it into my head, and I passed out. I don't know for how long I was out, but her stuff was gone when I woke up. Everything except for Bonnie. I checked the paper and obituaries to make sure she didn't kill herself. Her behavior implied she would, but thankfully she didn't. But I found it strange when her mom started to contact me. She hasn't heard from her either. Her mom always creeped me out too. She was involved in some kind of witchcraft. I tried not to be judgmental and get the wrong idea though. She was surprised I hadn't heard and explained we broke up. 2 weeks later, she sent me a message that Stephanie had contacted her. I felt glad. I mean, we spent years together, and I still wished her the best. A couple of months went by, and I noticed Bonnie was still sitting around. The first few times I'd put her back in the box, or at least I thought I did. But she'd always show back up in weird places. Then I would notice a few other strange things. I'd find my cigarettes in the trash, and my baseball game would be changed to another channel when I took a bathroom break. One day Bonnie was on a fan, one day in the fridge, on the couch, you name it. I have thrown her away multiple times. I tried finding logic in maybe my ex was breaking in and messing with me, but she left her key behind when she left. Maybe she'd made an extra. The police didn't see any signs of break-in and checked cameras on my hall for the past month with no signs of her. I ordered some more cameras online so I could see inside when I was at work. They should be here Monday. I even considered moving to another apartment. I was becoming scared. I became so scared, I even asked the officer to take the elf away. He must have thought I was crazy. He didn't understand why, but he complied. A few weeks went by, and it felt like everything was normal again. I even had a birthday party at my apartment with the guys, and this cute girl from work came by. Her name is Megan. We got to talking after everyone left, and one thing happened to another. I felt on top of the world. Life was going to be better. I asked her if she wanted a bottle of water, and she confirmed with a kiss on the cheek. I told her to dig for the remote, and we could watch whatever she wanted to. I walked back in, and she was wrapped up in a sheet and she smiled.
I don't know why you have one of these elf on the shelves under your pillow in August, but it sure is cute.
I dropped the water as she held up Bonnie. Her nose began bleeding violently, and she started screaming as if she was being tormented. I ripped the doll out of her hands and threw Bonnie against the wall. Megan fell to the floor limp. The paramedic on the phone talked me through CPR until they could arrive. Gladly, Megan is stable. I took a knife and ripped that doll up to shreds. I felt like a madman. So here I am writing this now, very drunk. I was waiting on Megan to text me and let me know she's okay, but I noticed something sitting on my couch. I think I'm going crazy, and I don't know what to do. The elf looks so much like Stephanie.